Assuming you have successfully downloaded BAM from the Windows App Store, then we're going to do a tutorial in how to get started. So first, obviously, you need to load the program. Now this in front of us is the standard view. And if your view is not set up like this, and you don't know how to get it set up like this, then it's best to watch the tutorial on how to manipulate views, which if you're wondering where that is, you can find it here in tutorials, setting up the views. So assuming you have this view, we're going to get started. This one in the middle, the canvas, is where we actually do our drawing. So I'm just going to jump straight in and draw something. Now before we draw something, we need to set the color of the pen. Click here, and I'm going to set it to black. This is the color wave window. I've chosen a color. If I move my mouse off of this window, it will just disappear. So moving my mouse off now, it should be gone. If it doesn't, then you can press close to get rid of it, or it might be that it didn't. Hang on, let me get it back. It might be that it didn't because this pin was checked. If the pin is checked, then it doesn't disappear when you move the mouse off. Okay, moving the mouse off, we now have our line ready to go as black and thickness 2. So I'm going to add a zigzaggy line. I'm clicking the mouse down, holding it down and moving, lifting up, and now wherever I click, a new point is formed. Now I have two options. If I want to stop with this line, I can press Enter or Escape. Or I can press this button here, or this one here in fact. Both of these set a neutral state. I'm going to click this one. So I'm in a neutral state. I've stopped adding to that line. However, now it's laid, I can still... So these lines are called squiggles, is their official term in this, and you'll see why by the end. So I can edit any point and move it around. If I wanted to change its properties, I would come over to this properties panel over here. And we have open here the appearance. I'm going to change the thickness of it to 5. And I'm actually going to change the outline now to slightly softer, a blue. That will work. Now with this, we can connect up the points. So if I wanted to close this off, I could connect that there. And now if I move this point, every segment that goes to that point will move with it. If I want to carry on editing the line, I can press this button and I can carry on adding to it. Pressing Enter. Now if I take this central point, you can see everything moves with it. I can move around the whole object. If I wanted to duplicate the object, I could hold down Control and then move my mouse and we'll have a duplicate of that squiggle. If we wanted to put a splash of color in the middle of one of these triangles, then I would go to this area, this Add Splashes of Color. And the default color for our splash is this kind of turquoisey blue. I'm going to change that to a yellow, maybe a bright orange color. So you can't see this whole window, but there's more oranges over here. I'm going to set it to this orange here. Yes. That's the one. Moving my mouse off. And now click this button. This straight away means I'm going to be able to insert a splash. So I can put it anywhere. I'm going to drop it in this triangle. We're going to have an orange splash in the middle of that triangle. If any of these points or segments move around, you can see that that color fills the space available. And I can take that splash object and I could put it over here. I could also duplicate it in the same way we duplicated the squiggle. So I'm going to hold Control down. We now have two of them. If I wanted to change a property of it, I would select the splash, go to Appearance. There's very few options with splashes, and I'm going to change this. I'll just play it by ear. I guess pink. And now we can, of course, duplicate a pink one, and I might want to duplicate the orange one again. Pressing Ctrl Z undoes actions. So if I press Ctrl Z, it will undo, and if I hold it down, it will keep undoing all of my actions back to the beginning. Ctrl Y redoes your actions. Let's say we wanted to edit this line here, so it had some curve in it. Now the first thing we'd want to do is we want to split it, create another point in the middle. Now the shortcut is press H. Whilst this is selected, press H on your keypad. However, we could also go into Segment, because this is a segment, and click Halve it. I'm going to click the button here. So now that line is halved. And there's a number of ways that we can get some curve on this. If I go to the points, and I just move my face out of the way, and we click Wed, these two segments, this segment and this segment, will get their gradient from each other. So I'm going to highlight this point, and I'm going to press Wed. You can see now that those two segments have their gradient from each other. And if I move this point around, the gradients will change accordingly. And that is true with any point. If I want to undo that, I could press Ctrl Z, or I could click Divorce, or Shortcut A. So these down here are either letters in brackets are our keyboard shortcuts. And these keyboard shortcuts are applicable to the object selected. So if I unselected it, we don't have those shortcuts because it's a different object. But I'm going to select this one again, and we have those shortcuts available to us again. Notice the points expander dims out when I'm not selected a point, and that's because those specific buttons are relevant to the point. If we wanted the buttons relevant to the segment that we're highlighted, we'd go into Segments. I'm going to highlight the point, and I'm going to click Divorce. Now notice these symbols here. So it's currently curvy, and if I click Divorce, it's going to move over to the right. It's going to be back to a sharper angle. And with the Wed symbol, Wed is for wedding, by the way, we currently have a sharp angle, and if I press it, it's going to go to curvy, like more on the right.
No point selected to marry.
I don't know if you heard that, but it just said no point selected to marry, which should say no point selected to wed. And I will change that in the code. After I've done this tutorial. Selecting a point, clicking Wed, clicking Divorce. If I wanted to do this without using those buttons, we can take this guy. So I clicked down on this segment, and if I move it over this segment, that will request to get its gradient from that segment. And I can take this guy and ask him to get his gradient from the other segment. So we've achieved the same without having to worry about buttons. And if I want to undo that, I hover over and then come off, and then it knows that I didn't want that gradient anymore. Okay, I'm going to delete these two objects, and I want to demonstrate the gradient with some more different squiggles. So deleting that. Now our splashes are still there, now filling the whole area. So I'm going to have to delete those. And actually later on in the tutorial we'll find a way of doing it where they're attached. There's a lot of them. Attached to the object so they won't remain after the object's been deleted. Before we added this straight connected squiggle. We can do one that's curvy straight off the bat. But as you saw from before, we turn the straight one into a curvy one, and equally we can turn a curvy one into a straight one. So say I wanted these two segments to not share the common gradient. As you're probably guessing by now, click on points, click divorce or shortcut A on the keypad, A attorney for divorce, and these guys no longer get their gradient from each other. And again, we can fill a splash. Now this time I'm going to attach the splash to a segment. So that's attached to the inside of that segment, which means that if I delete this object, that will go as well. It also means I can't change the shape in a way that means the splash no longer fills it. Let me show you what I mean by that. I'm going to take this splash, I'm going to just plonk it in the middle here. So that's adding a splash of color from that point. If I was to take this and move it so that this line was on the other side of that splash, then the splash is outside the shape now. I press Ctrl Z to bring it back in. However, we can avoid that if we move this and attach it to one of these segments. So now it's attached to that segment. So if I move the segment, it goes with the segment and it will never be outside of the shape. Let's say we deleted this. If it's attached to the segment as it is now, then that splash of color cannot go outside this shape. So I'm just going to press delete. Now you see we've removed this and the splash of color stops there, connects those guys up, these 2 points. If we had it as just hovering in the surface, then the color can spill out through this gap and it goes everywhere. I'm actually going to delete the color for now. The splash of color is going. And I'm going to delete this squiggle. Okay, so I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, if I want to continue working on this squiggle, but I want to start again, I can press Spacebar. However, if I want to, so Spacebar allows me to carry on adding the object I was just adding. So we were doing straight squiggles. So I could press Spacebar and carry on, but we have to make sure, in this case, this one's clicked, because I want to keep working on this squiggle. I don't want to start a new squiggle. So I'm going to click this, and now I'm going to press space, which allows me to start again. And I'm going to go from here to that point, back there, and then I'm going to press space again. And finally I'm going to come down from here to here. Pressing enter, and this I didn't want, that was just some noise. So if I click on this dot and press delete, that point, sorry, I clicked on the point and pressed delete, it deleted the point. Now I can add, I won't do that yet actually, I'm going to add a single straight line, and actually this is a shortcut if you're just going to add one. Now what I'm going to do here, and that doesn't look like it actually is meeting up with that point. Yeah. So this point is connected to a whole bunch of segments. I could take each of these and ask them to get their gradient from this guy. Which would mean if this guy moved, all their gradients change. However, I'm actually going to press Ctrl Z and undo that. Because there's a quicker way. If you want to get lots of gradients, you actually take this one and you hold down Control on the keypad and then you move it over. This time, it's each one it touches, it's assigning the gradient of itself to it. So now if I move this around, all the gradients move. I'm going to click here and press Enter to make my document a bit wider. And I'm going to select these 2 points. I'm going to move them both down. I'm going to make this a bit wider at the top. And I'm going to put some splashes of colour in. Now before we click this button, which allowed us to put in a splash of colour, this time I'm going to click this one, which lets us put in multiple splashes of colour. And by the way, if you ever want to know what a button does, you can just click down and swipe right until that question mark goes white, and then release, then a help file on that control will come up. In this case, I'm just going to click it because I'm showing what it is, so we don't need to look at the help file. That's called swell, when you swipe for help. Okay, so what's going to happen is the color wave window will come up, we choose a color, and then we'll drop the splash, and as soon as we've dropped it, this color window will automatically come up. So the first one's going to be this green, moving my mouse off, and I'm going to drop that onto this segment. Now behind this, it's gone green, but in the meantime, we'll choose a new color. That color, whatever that is. You can see the old green. Now I'm going to go for yellow. Now I could move this off onto my other screen if you have 2 screens, which means you'll be able to see in real time the color changing. Go for a sky blue and drop it touching to this segment. And now to stop being in add splash mode, I can press Enter or Escape, or either of these 2 buttons. Changing the angle, you can see all my angle changes. Now I can well imagine you've become very attached to this shape. However, I'm going to delete it. And I'm going to add a panel. These 2 buttons both add panels. And panels are basically, either of those buttons are the same objects. Panels allow you to collect text, squiggles, and other panels. And the only difference between them is they have flags on them to know which button you pressed, so it comes up with your presets. So I'm going to click this one, which is generally what you use if you're going to add squiggles and all sorts of stuff. This one is generally for just text. So I have a panel here. And I could type in the panel. And I could go on to font and change the font of it. The actual main leaf is actually just a panel. So it's all based around these panels. I'm going to delete this text. And I'm going to make this panel pretty big. And I'm going to build a cube pyramid type of thing. And deliberately make it more wonky than I normally accidentally do, because I'll show you a technique for straightening it all up after this. Okay, pressing space, and that will allow me to carry on working on this one, because we're in this mode, we're in accumulate mode. Now I'm going to go up to a central point, pressing space, adding the final one on, and now I'm going to press enter. Okay, we have our cuboid with a kind of pyramid on top, and at the moment it's a little bit wonky. One way of sorting this out is to go into here and set the grid to, you can set it to any number. I'm going to set it to 10 pixels, which means these will all leap in 10 pixels. I'm actually going to change it to 20, and this makes it very easy to line up my points. in theory. Okay, so these are all nicely lined up now. I'll set the grid back to 1 here. And I think I'm going to put some colour in it. This one is the one we haven't pressed yet. So this one just straight away added a splash. This one brings up the colour dialog first, then adds a single splash. Whereas this adds multiple splashes. So I'm going to bring up the colour dialog, and by the way, that little black rectangle at the top left is supposed to represent the colour dialog. The wave window, which came up on my other screen. And I'll bring it back over here. And I choose kind of a grey for this. So I'm adding splashes and add it to there. And I'm going to then do the same one actually for here. Actually, we'll go here. And I'm going to do a slightly darker one for this side as if it was not in the light. That will do. I'm going to hold down to move it, hold Control to copy it, and pin it in there. So we have our pyramid thing. Now I can actually select multiple points at once. So let's say I wanted to make this thing, this pyramid thing, taller on the base. I might select the 3 base points by holding Control down and clicking, and then lifting Control up, and then I can move them around. So notice the top's not getting wider or taller, just the bases. And equally, I'm clicking off that, I could select these 3 points and move them around. Now I select these 2 points at the back. I'm going to try to, holding Control down, should be able to make it a lot wider at the back or thinner as per I saw fit. I take and add these 2 points to the collection and move them all off to the right. So this is where the real speed of BAM comes in, because in putting things down for the first time, it's generally about the same speed as many of the other drawing apps, with the possible exception of making these squiggly lines. You can get squiggly lines, so I'm just going to show you, to kind of go where you want straight off without having to faff around with some of the settings you might normally have to play with. Pressing Enter to stop adding that. But yeah, the real speed is in editing. Once you're down, you can move it to wherever you want, and it's very quick. And I cross that off. And I'm sure I had some masterful point, which I have now forgotten. I'm going to label this. I'm going to put a panel in as a text panel to label it. PYR for pyramid 1. Now I'm going to make that shorter. And actually I'm going to change that font to title so it's a bit bigger. And with everything, anything you don't understand, you can swipe right on, do swell, and the font's a good one to look at separately. Here, there's some presets. Here, you can just change it manually, but there's also some other clever little bits with the font that you might want to look into by just swiping right, and it will give you a full tutorial. I'm going to try and squiggle everything up a bit to... I have to be careful here because that pyramid has now disappeared into the PYR1 panel. There, let's get it out. And I'm going to make this skinnier. Now this time, I'm going to duplicate the whole panel. Now there's 2 ways we can do this. The one you've seen already, hold down Control when we're moving. And now we have 2. Just going to squidge these guys over a bit. In fact, I'm going to make the width of this leaf very slightly wider, 730 pixels. Just slightly easier fit things on here. So I'm going to delete this because I want to show another way. Just simply select the object you want, press Ctrl-C on your keypad.
Object copied to clipboard.
It just told me object was copied to clipboard, and then click where you want to go and press Ctrl-V. You can then move that to here. And I call this one Pyramid 2. And this time I'm going to make this taller. I'm actually going to take these 3 points and make them taller. Okay, that kind of ruins everything. So I'll take that back. And I give this one a door. So I'm clicking on this segment and pressing H on the keypad to halve it. I'm going to put that there. Selecting this segment, pressing H. Going up here. Selecting this segment, pressing H. Into there. Just doing the same thing again and again, so I'll stop saying it. Okay. And I'm also going to click on this point and press W on the keypad to wed them so we have a nice arch. I can see these angles here. They kind of line up here. That's just because it so happens that where these are married up, their angle is coming to there. What I'm going to do is take these and ask them specifically to get their angle from these lower ones. Okay, well that's ruined everything. That was after a paint run on BAM. Put that back up to there. Now there's a heap more tutorials on things about this on BAM. If you like your image, you can send it to a friend by clicking here, send. We click here, and this would allow us to send it to a contact. We're not currently logged in, so we click login. Or we can send it off to the gallery, or have it printed on something. So you see here, it's what it would look like on a t-shirt. Not great, if we're honest, but some things would look good. Here we can see messages we've received. Here we can log in, which allows us to send and receive messages, upload things to the gallery. This tab here, if we wanted to start a new leaf, so pad default and leaf default. If I want to start a new leaf, which I'm going to, well, leaf_1 is a reasonable name for what we're trying to do, but you could change the name here. Clicking add. Now going into that leaf, you can see it's blank. We can do whatever we want. I'm going to click freestyle line. Okay, escape, Control Z. Our default color was white, which is less than useful. I'll change it to blue, close. Pressing enter to stop adding freestyles. And it's still just a squiggle, so we can still edit it after we put down the first lay. I could delete this if I wanted, or I could change the order in the pad. I'm going to delete it, and I'm going to add a new pad. Pad_1 is fine, and you add leaves. So this is effectively your file management system. I'm going to go back to the one we were working on. If you wanted to see all of, let's actually add another one. If you wanted to see all of the leaves in your pad, you can click on pad, and here's our 2 leaves, and we can go back to this one through here, or go back to leaf 1. You can also edit the icon, this thumb. So if I click here, E, or edit, I'm going to write hi, and you know what? Press escape and delete this existing text. which has ruined everything. Hi. So you can see we now have our thumb. Not a great thumb in this case. I'm going to actually edit it and delete all that. Now to select objects, you need to drag back and so left and up. If you want to select text, you would have to drag forward or down. So I can select all this text by dragging forward, press delete. I'm going to draw a very brief pyramid so we know that this leaf is about pyramids. Pressing space, just have that one selected. Pressing space, pressing enter. Make it a bit taller, make it a bit wider. I'm going to take these guys down a bit, change the grid to 1, move that over. Okay, so now we have a pyramid here. Makes more sense. This thumb now makes sense. And I go back to our overall view. Click anywhere to get out of it, or you can click on this hide button, or you can click here. There's loads of places you can click. Anywhere off this screen, on this canvas, will get rid of it. Same with the send. Click off and get rid of it. Messages covers the whole screen. You can click anywhere off screen and get rid of it, or you can click up here. I'm going to log in so we can see messages I've received, mainly from myself. Type in my username there, password here. Keep me logged in. If you were here and you didn't have a username and a password, you click sign up. Clicking log in. Okay, now I can go to my messages and you can see I have this exciting message. Well, it's a very exciting life I lead. If I go to gallery, so with these views, if I want to get rid of this canvas view, I can right click here. Just say that all the time. So this blue triangle up here, I can right click it, or I can normal click it and click clear here. And I'll look at gallery. And here's some pictures in the gallery. I'll collapse these tabs just so we have a bit more space. And there is my dream car. And also my actual car. Hide that. Probably the main take-home point from this is that anything you don't understand, you can swipe right on and you will get a tutorial on that specific thing. Also, there's a list of tutorials up here, so you can just watch whatever you need to help you master BAM. Okay, I'm just going to set us back to where we were. When you've played around with the concepts in this Getting Started tutorial, then the next stage is to go to tutorials and do advanced drawing tutorial. That's about another half-hour tutorial, and it will give you more or less the complete set of techniques to very quickly do any drawing you wish to do.